Hymns, Prayers, and Invitations, the latest album from Rick Lee James, has garnered praise from CCM Magazine, Worship Leader Magazine, UTR Media, and more. Written and arranged using hymnals and prayer books for inspiration, this collection of 10 modern hymn-like worship songs will inspire individuals and congregations to draw near to the heart of God. Highlights include Christ is Lord, inspired by St. Patrick's Breastplate Prayer, Advent Hymn, and the Communion Hymn, The Invitation. Worship leaders will be glad to know that all songs on the album are published through Lifeway Worship. Find Hymns, Prayers, and Invitations on Amazon, Spotify, Apple Music, CD Baby, and at rickleejames.com.
Have you ever thought to yourself, man, I'd like to host my own podcast? Well, guess what? You can go to podbean.com/voices and get everything you need to create, manage, and promote your podcast. I use Podbean every week for Voices in My Head. There's easy uploading and publishing tools, stunning templates, custom domains, social and promotional tools, an embeddable podcast player, monetization tools, and more. It is your all-in-one podcasting solution. With Podbean, you can create professional podcasts in minutes without any programming knowledge. Best of all, everything is mobile ready right from the start. So go to podbean.com/voices. And when you sign up, use the code VOICES and you'll get a sizable discount. Podbean, for your home podcasting. Thank you for listening to Voices in My Head. Welcome to Voices in My Head, the official podcast of me, Rick Lee James. I'm a recording artist, a singer, songwriter, an author, a worship leader, and an ordained minister in the Church of the Nazarene. The Voices in My Head podcast is your source for discussions on music, literature, movies, pop culture, theology, and more. Now sit back, relax, and listen to the latest episode of the Voices in My Head podcast. And don't forget to let the voices in your head be heard by following me on Twitter at Rick Lee James and sharing your thoughts about today's show. Welcome back to Voices in My Head podcast. As always, I am your host, Rick Lee James, and I'm so glad that you're here with us today. We have a very special guest. His name is Tim Timmons. He is a singer. He is a songwriter. He is a survivor of cancer and has quite a story that he's going to be able to share with us today. His new album is called Who I Am, and it's an album that's actually for children and their parents both, so it's going to be a great conversation to have. We had a good discussion over Skype, but as Skype sometimes does, it cut out here and there. I make mention of this when I'm actually talking with him just because I was getting a little frustrated by it this morning. I am really in a new location today from where I usually record, and we were having some connection problems, so one of these days going to get this figured out. I'm going to have a studio of our own where we don't have to keep moving all the time, and we'll be able to get this show in the best possible audio quality that we can. But anyway, I wanted to say thank you all for listening to Voices in My Head so faithfully. Thank you for all the good comments that you have. We're just going to continue making these shows. I love podcasting, and I love having you be a part of this journey with me. We're going to start today by listening to one of Tim Timmons' songs off his new album, Who I Am, and then we're going to go right into my conversation with Tim. So, thank you for listening to Voices in My Head. You can find out more about us at rickleejames.podbean.com. That is the podcast page, and you can go to my website at rickleejames.com or find me on Facebook or Twitter. You guys know how to use the internet. Check it out.
What you have in store for me? It's a wild life, it's my new identity. So I won't let fear call me by name. I won't be shaken or afraid. Jesus, I'm confident in who you say I am. Yeah. I'm alive, cause you're living in me. I'm a child of the one true King. I am loved, that you woke me up today. You're walking with me every step along the way. So I won't let fear call me by name. I won't be shaken or afraid. Jesus, I'm confident in who you say I am. I'm alive, 'cause you're living in me. I'm a child of the one true King. I am loved, I'm forgiven and free. It's true, it's a wild life. That's who I am in you. That's who I am in you. Help me remember that you love me no matter what. Help me remember that you made me who I am. Help me remember that you call me yours, yeah. Help me remember that you love me no matter what. Help me remember that you made me who I am. Help me remember that you call me yours. I'm alive, 'cause you're living in me. I'm a child of the one true King. I am loved, I'm forgiven and free. It's true, it's the wild life. That's who I am in you. That's who I am in you. Yeah, that's who I am in you. Yeah, that's who I am in you. That's who I am in you.
Tim Timmons is a singer, songwriter, worship leader, and founder of 10,000 Minutes. 10,000 Minutes is a nonprofit equipping ministry that is executed through various creative outlets such as live performance, blog, podcast, video, songwriting, devotionals, worship leader interaction, speaking, film, TV production, and conferences. Tim's new album, Who I Am, is Bible-based, kid-tested, and parent-approved. It sounds like a cereal almost when I think about it that way. Who I Am features 10 fully charged pop songs intended for kids and parents to pray all week long, with all songs either written or co-written by Timmons. Each song was carefully crafted with the question in mind, what do we want our kids to pray? Tim Timmons, welcome to the Voices in My Head podcast.
Thank you. You didn't mention Hot Dancer in that list. That would have probably been a little better, but that's fine if you just skip that one. That's fine.
How did I miss Hot Dancer? I should have had that on it.
It's weird. That should be on my bio, but obviously it wasn't. So
Hot Dancer, and next time for sure when we get you on the show.
Yeah,
See,
thank you.
How many times can I mess up the intro today? We'll just keep doing it. But
You're doing great.
Man, it's great to have you on the show today. We've been trying to connect for a while, and your agency has been in contact with me for a couple months now. And I thought when I was in Nashville for the release of the Rich Mullins book a couple months ago that I would be able to meet up with you, but our schedules just didn't work out. And so here we are doing it over Skype, and I'll let listeners know in advance, as happens from time to time, there's been a little bit of a connection problem today on my end. I don't think it's going to cause any problems, but just in case you hear anything cutting out, I wanted to let you know in advance. But we're not going to count on that happening. It's just going to be a good connection today. So
Okay, good.
So, Tim, I'm glad to have you here today. Now, before we get too far into our conversation, the word on the street is that you write an X on your wrist each day. So my question to start out with you, is that true that you write an X on your wrist each day? And if so, why do you do that?
Yeah, that's like, and some people have said, man, are you straight edge? And I say, well, I guess I started doing this about 8 years ago. And I mean, it's a longer story, but ultimately, I just started seeing that I was a varsity American Christian, better than most. I could beat most of you in being an awesome American Christian. But I just found myself being soul tired. I mean, I was a worship leader at a huge community in California, just an awesome pastor. But the fact was, I knew all about Jesus. I just didn't really know him. And I did my own quiet times and all that stuff, but I didn't really know him. And so I just decided, I'm done working for you, Jesus. I'm been working for you my whole life, and it just made me tired. So I'm just gonna start hanging out with you. And that's going to be all I do is I just want to be with you. And then I started reading, what Jesus talks about is the good news, and how Jesus never said him dying on the cross for us is the good news. I mean, please, everybody hear me out. That is amazing news. It is the great, great, great news, but it's not the best news according to Jesus. And how Jesus, when he talks about the gospel, the good news, it's always about the availability of the kingdom of God. And so I'm like, oh gosh. So Jesus, what does it look like for me to actually seek first your kingdom all week long? Not just on Sunday morning when I'm awesome, but all week long. Like, what if he's actually real all week? So I started writing this X on my wrist to just say, it's not about my kingdom, Jesus, it's about yours. So where am I getting caught up in my own kingdom today? And that's kind of why I started 8 years ago. There's a song that's on my first Sony record, and it's called Only One Standing, and the chorus is, I surrender all. Would you let my kingdom fall so that yours alone will be the only one standing at the end of my day? And that's what I prayed for the past 8 years. And now it has different meanings, which I'll get into it, I'm sure, at some point. But we have practices that we do every single week. And this is just my reminder.
Well, that's awesome. Well, good to hear about that. And I knew our listeners would want to be informed about the X on your wrist. And you know what?
Yeah.
That actually plays into a little bit, because you've already shared some of your life story, and we want to talk about your music today and the new projects you have coming out. But I think your story itself and some of the places that God has brought you through is very interesting. And I wonder if, before we get too far into the album and the music that you make, I'm always more interested in the person themselves. And I know that you have lived through quite a lot, including cancer being part of your story. I wonder if you would be able to, I know this would be a hard thing to ask you to do in a nutshell, but could you share some of that story with us and sort of that journey that has brought you to where you are now?
Yeah, of course. I was given, what is it now? 6 years ago, they gave me 5 years to live, which is just pretty wild math. And people ask me to share my story all the time, and I know there's not my story. It's perspective through Jesus in the midst of this whole thing is more of my story. I've had tumor and surgeries and procedures and all these different things, and really, in the end, I think it's all pointing toward me saying, okay, either God, you're God in the midst of this stuff, or you're not. And then you're either good in the midst of this stuff, or you're not. And it's been a really great piece of perspective. I wrote a blog a while back called The Gift of Cancer, which sounds asinine, but it really is one of the greatest gifts of saying, you know what, perspective is king in this stuff. I think in the kingdom of God, perspective is king, which is or not king, but you know what I mean. So yeah, I think the gift of and this whole thing has been perspective. And let's see, we just got good news the other day for the first time ever in 16 years that my tumors are actually shrinking. And the doctor came in and he says, "What are you doing for your cancer? I'm not doing anything, and your tumors are shrinking." So we're grateful today. And what was also really an interesting thing that I haven't shared with too many people yet is that I've kind of been surprised in some ways that I've been practicing joy no matter what. We've just been saying, Jesus, you are my joy, not what you can do for me. You're my hope, not what you can do for me. And it's been a really beautiful practice for the past maybe 8 years. And in that, when they gave me good news, I was like, cool, that's great. It doesn't really define me or change much in my day. I keep waking up. Like I was listening right now, you woke up today. Like, what a huge, huge gift. So anyways, that's part of the journey through this cancer thing.
So you cut out for just a moment when you were telling us, you said that was 6 years ago, but did you say it was 6 years ago when they gave you the diagnosis of 5 years?
Oh, sorry. So 16 years ago, they gave
16
me 5
years. Okay, sorry. For some reason, there's that connection
Yeah,
problem we were talking about. Uh,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
amazing. Yeah, so they gave you
Yeah, so
5 years to live
16 years ago, they gave me
16
5
years
years.
ago. That's incredible.
Yeah, and it's an incurable cancer, other than the hand of God, obviously.
Hmm.
And I keep waking up. I mean, it is the
Yeah.
great gift.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
that's an amazing story, and I'm so glad that you're still here to share it with us and to be able to talk about the journey of joy that you're walking through with the Lord in the midst of this, and just some of the things that I'm sure you've learned along the way with cancer. And there's probably too many to get into now, but part of this journey that you've gone down, it's taken you to write a lot of different music. You've written books,
Yeah.
and now you've got this new endeavor, Who I Am, which you're not a kids artist, like someone that when you think of like,
No.
hey, this
Yep.
guy does kids music, but this really is music that you've written for children, but also for parents of children and whoever may listen. And I think it's a unique offering in that way. So since you aren't an artist who does like kids music for a living, why do a kids record at this point in your career?
Yeah, well, yeah, so I don't do kids music. It's not what I do, but I have a lot of kids. And I was a kid once. And so it's one of those things where I think, how can we help our kids pray all week long? And I think through the songs and the different times in my life when there have been certain songs that I learned as a kid that I still will bring back and just kind of pray thing I need to. And I thought, man, how great for me to be able to give my kids some pretty bold prayers, even with a little bit of a different, maybe a different idea of God than I grew up with, of Him being bigger than I grew up with Him being, of the things that He actually talks about that I didn't really know that He talks about and He cares about. I more thought it was, behavior modification and don't do this or this. And Jesus is just so much bigger than that stuff. And so what if we gave our kids prayers? What if our kids actually grew up with the same spirit that raised Jesus from the dead lives inside of them all week long? I mean, that's crazy. If they actually grew up with that concept and lived as though it was true, that's game changing. So I just, I've got 2 kids records now, and both of them really, I'm actually talking more to the adults than I am to the kids. But in there, I think everybody's just being invited into a new reality of Jesus. So it's pretty.
Well, I think it's a great thing as a parent myself. I have a 4-year-old at home, and I'm always looking for ways to help my child pray. And we actually have him in a Catholic preschool right now, partially because one thing I love that they do is they teach him to pray. In the morning they have Jesus time, and it's one of those things that we're trying to enforce it at home and when he goes out in the world. And this may be the only time that he's in a private school in his life in this moment, but I love to see, and I'm really intrigued by that, and I applaud that actually, that your goal is to teach children to pray all week long, because I really do believe that prayer is what we are called to as the people of God, all of us. And maybe children have, I don't want to say children have a closer connection to God, but there is something about it, isn't it, when Jesus talks about let the children come unto me, and there is a way that they have this holy imagination, and they aren't afraid to ask, and they aren't afraid to listen to what God may tell. And I think that's a beautiful thing that and I think you're trying to bring out in your album as you're writing music for kids too, and helping them believe and to live and trust in that way.
I think ultimately, one of the things that ago is this idea of believing. And, how many of us say that we believe that eating healthy and working out are the best for our body? I mean, who's thinking of a brain would say, yes, I believe that eating healthy and working out are the best things for our body. But I would say, then what did you eat for dinner last night? And it's one of those things, well, I had a burger and I had fries, whatever. And, whatever on burger and fries, I think they're wonderful. But the fact is that you don't actually believe that. To believe, and Jesus rarely uses the word to believe, yet people that talk about Jesus always say that he, do you believe this? Do you believe this? And Jesus only said it a few times, pretty much only in the book of John. And when he did say believe, he said believe, and it meant to live as though something is true. That's what believe means. And it just started changing my mind, going, oh, man, I don't know if I live as though I have the fullness of God in me all day long, all week long, not just morning or whenever you do mass, whenever you go, but all week long, I have the same spirit that raised Jesus from the dead in me. And what if I was found living as though that was true in my relationships, in my sickness, in my fear, and my worry? Worry is basically saying the exact opposite. And it's not living as though that I have the fullness of God in me, that he is actually God and I'm not. It's all these things. And really what it came down to was, it hit me this other piece, as well as belief, was that there are 10,080 minutes in a week. And you can just Google that if you need to, but it's true. And 80 of those minutes are generally spent in some gathering at the church, if you're into that type of thing, or the mass or whatever, and which is awesome. And I love the 80-minute gathering. It is so great, which leaves 10,000 other minutes during the week until you gather again. There are 10,000 minutes. And I think I've just always been the guy that's always said, hey, you guys come back to our service. And it hit me that what if I lived as though it was true all week long, that Jesus is alive and well at work in all things? What if we lived like that? And at the end of the Sermon on the Mount, when Jesus is talking on a mountain to a bunch of people, he says, so, hey, you guys, whoever hears my words and puts them into practice all week long, wise. And if you don't, it's just kind of foolish. And it hit me, oh my gosh, what if we start practicing Jesus principles all week long? Not to earn anything from God. We're not earning love or acceptance or grace. We just are going to become more beautiful on the other side of it, because we'll start looking more like him. So that's why we started 10,000minutes.com, 1000minutes.com. It's a weekly blog, and it's soon going to be a radio show, some things. Just how people practice Jesus all week. Really, I think why Jesus keeps waking me up every day and giving me platforms is so I can help and invite people into that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. No, I love that when I was reading about 10,000 minutes, and I thought that makes excellent sense. And honestly, this is a great goal for all of us, especially as worship leaders, when we're trying to think about what we do when we come together, on Sunday morning. Because, those other 10,000 minutes a week as disciples is what really counts. And I think what you're trying to do through this music too is you're helping kids and grown-ups learn to pray together outside the church. and so I really like that. We oftentimes segment our life into the 80-minute time, and we almost live like at times like that's when I'm a Christian and the rest of the life is the real world. And so I love what you're saying about, being reminded this discipleship is the other 10,000 hours too. If maybe it's all the other 10,000 hours, maybe the 80 minutes is where we come to learn and the rest of it's where we live it out. And that whole idea.
Yeah, I've really been seeing. Yeah, I've been seeing the 80 minutes. I think are wonderful. It's where we practice what it looks like to surrender for the rest of the week. When we sing these songs of surrender, we raise our hands, we do these things. It's really a safe place to practice surrendering all week long. And to be honest, I'm also, another word, I'm kind of into words, but the word church, Jesus says the word church twice, and it's not what we think. And, we know this. We know the church is not a place, it's who we are, but it's not what we actually say. Like as worship leaders, we all, or anybody, think of every time you say the word church, and I say the word church, I don't mean a place or thing that we go to. And that's just not even biblical. And so I've been even trying to help, have different conversations with worship leaders and different pastors and different people to say, hey, we can't go to church. It's impossible. It's biblically impossible to go to church. It's who we are. So let's change the definition of even church. even for our kids, like my kid said, a while back, Noah said, Dad, are we going to church today? And I said, oh, buddy, I'm being this guy, by the way, that I used to be so annoyed with. But I said, but buddy, remember, we can't go to church. It's who we are, right, buddy? Because I want my son to know when he's at school and somebody calls him a name, who he actually is, who his identity is all week long. And part of that is he is the church all week long. He has the same spirit that raised Jesus from the dead in him all week long, not just on Sunday mornings. So as much as I kind of make fun of myself, and I used to kind of hate people like me. I was like, just shut up and just say you go to church, whatever, you know. But I think it's really important and really teaching kids to know who they are, and where they go is not the church, it's who they are. If that makes sense.
Sure. Oh, totally. That's fantastic. And of course, if I told my son that on some Sundays, he'd say, "Great, we don't have to go to church. Let's stay home. Let's watch cartoons, right?" Say, "No, we're still going to worship, but we are the church." So.
We've tried to say we're gathering. We hang out with the church. So when we have the church at our house, we call it oh man, the church is coming over. Some of the church. Small group is. So it's been pretty cool to watch my kids have a different view of that than I did growing up.
Yeah. No, that's a great way to look at it, and you have to start early with them, that's for sure. Well, let me ask you this, on this new album, Who I Am. I know this is like asking, as a songwriter myself, this is like asking which one of your kids is your favorite. But do you have a favorite track on the new album?
I do. It is probably the song I Surrender. And it is this idea that surrender doesn't have to be this sad, somber thing. I mean, really, surrender generally to me, I surrender all, and I'm about to cry, which is wonderful, and that there's a total place for that. But there's also a lot more about joy in the midst of surrender, and so I think it's trying to learn how to teach kids that we can actually be joyful in the midst of surrendering really hard things to Jesus. Like when things are super hard, what if we just surrendered these things and said, Jesus, you are God and I'm not in this situation, and you're actually at work in whatever crap that I'm going through right now. That's just, there's a different side of joy there. Jesus talks about joy in persecution and then in sorrow. So this song is really fun, and kids are digging it, but I think adults will dig it too.
Well, good. Well, I'm going to make sure we play that one today as we close out the show, and once I get it all edited together. But I want to take some time too, you have this great new children's album, Who I Am, but I also want to talk real quickly and let you talk about, you've got a lot of other music too, like Awake Our Souls. You've got this holiday EP called Mighty Christmas, and we're going into the Christmas time right now and Advent season, and everybody's always looking for good music. And tell us about, just kind of give us in a nutshell some of your other music that you have to offer to people as well.
Yeah. Music used to drive me crazy because I didn't understand it.
Sorry, can you say that one more time? I apologize. You cut out again. Could you just say that one more time?
Totally. Christmas music used to drive me crazy. I didn't understand it. I didn't know what God rest you merry gentlemen meant. That wasn't like a normal phrase that I would say at the house. Hey, rest you merry gentlemen. It just didn't sound like it fit until I saw what these prayers really were. And as I did, I started writing my own prayers for Christmas and then changing up some of the old carols, if you will. And so that's what this record is called, Mighty Christmas. And the Mighty Christmas really comes down to the word Mary. We think of Mary as happy, like Happy Christmas, Merry Christmas. And in the Old English, Mary actually didn't mean happy. Robin Hood and his merry men wasn't Robin Hood and his happy-go-lucky guys jumping around with swords. Mary actually meant mighty and powerful in the Old English. And so when you think of it, Jesus coming and, the Advent season and him being here now and coming again is either like this happy, sappy, dumb waste of our time, or it's like part of a revolution that is mighty and powerful. So when we say Merry Christmas this season, it's either, oh, that's a cool, happy Christmas, or it's like Jesus is actually alive and well. Like this is mighty and powerful. So the song is called Mighty Christmas on there. And then there's a radio single this Christmas called Yes You Are that's on there. That hopefully you'll be hearing on the radio. And then I write for other people and all the time, and Jesus just keeps opening those doors, and I've got all my own records. So music is one of my favorite vehicles to invite people into something bigger about Jesus.
Well, that's fantastic, and you certainly have a lot of different things that you're a part of. As we talked about at the beginning of the show, you've got a radio show coming out, you do blogging, you do television work, you do music, you've got so many different things that you're trying to do with your life, and I love that. I'm interested in a lot of things too, and I love seeing when people are expressing the many gifts that they have. I want to let our listeners know that Tim Timmons' new album is available now on iTunes and Amazon.com and other digital retailers internationally, and also directly at his website at timtimmonsmusic.com. And you can get not only the digital music, but you can also get the physical CD. And I'd encourage you to do that this year. They make great Christmas presents if you're looking for gifts, and I'm always telling people, buy music for people. It's one of my favorite gifts to get. I always enjoy getting music. And Tim Timmons is one you should consider to put in someone's stocking this year or under their tree, or just buy it for yourself. It's a good choice for any time. And this new kids album, I really encourage you to go out and get and take a listen with your children. You may learn something yourself too, Mom and Dad, for sure. Well, what have we not talked about today that we need to, Tim? I try to give all the artists at the end of our conversation a chance just to fill in the gaps if there's anything we missed.
No, I think we've done great. We didn't talk about my dancing all that much, but that hurt my feelings a little bit.
Next time
we'll
have to,
no.
Yeah, we'll have to have the hot dancing podcast. We'll do part 2. So
that would be great. No, I'm most excited about the 10,000 minutes stuff. So I got stuff out. Go to 10,000minutes.com and check that stuff out. And then we have practices every single week. There are 3 practices that come out Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings via text. So if you want to text in 10,000 minutes, all one word, to 55678 on the texting, you'll get little prompts of little practices that we're doing every week. So that's just exciting, and that's what I mostly care about, is how do we help people practice Jesus all week long.
Nice. And again, for listeners, just so in case they were writing it down, you just text out the 10,000 minutes and you send it to 55678. 10,000 minutes, no spaces, and you can be joined on that list for text messaging.
Yep, 10000 minutes. Yep.
All right. Well, don't get too many zeros, but I love that, and I love that it's all constantly. I'm never gonna forget that. I don't think now, the 10,080 minutes in a week, and it's gonna help me as I express that to people too about our lifelong mission throughout the week and the different minutes and hours. Well, Tim Timmons, thank you for taking time to be on the show today, and thank you for being one of the voices in my head this week.
Changed everything, conquered death and raised a king, made hope the air we breathe. Can't stop what he started. Amen. What's done is done. His story is our story, and he has surrender
Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/voicesinmyhead. That's audibletrial.com/voicesinmyhead. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. That's audibletrial.com/voicesinmyhead. Give it a try today. Thank you for joining me here this week on the Voices in My Head podcast. I hope you'll visit me on my website at rickleejames.com, follow me on Twitter at rickleejames, like my artist page on Facebook at facebook.com/rickleejames, and keep up to date on what I'm writing at my author page on amazon.com. Make sure to follow my calendar on the website, and if you would like to have me come to your town to do a concert, a speaking engagement, or a book event, you can book me through my website by clicking on the link for Pair Booking Agency. That's Pare Booking. And finally, it would mean the world to me if you were to leave me a review of this podcast on iTunes. The more positive reviews that we receive, the more visible this podcast is on the internet. And now the benediction. May the God of peace, who raised Christ from the dead, strengthen your inner being for every good work. And may the blessing of God Almighty, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit rest upon you and dwell within you this day and forevermore. Amen.